In the quiet hours of the night, when most people are asleep, there are moments, brief, almost invisible, when something feels wrong. A sound where there shouldn't be one. A shadow that doesn't match the light. A voice that shouldn't exist. These aren't stories of imagination. They come from real people, real places. Police reports, witness accounts, unexplained recordings. Some were investigated. Some were buried. And some were never solved. What you're about to hear are 10 disturbing true horror stories. Events that happen to ordinary people who never expected their lives to turn into something out of a nightmare. And once you hear them, you might start noticing things too. Story 1: The Man in the Ceiling. In 2017, a family in a small suburban home in Ohio began noticing strange sounds at night. At first it was subtle. Light scratching noises above the ceiling. Footstep-like creaks around 2:30 a.m. Occasional tapping, slow, deliberate. They assumed it was rodents. The father, Mark Jensen, even checked the attic twice. Nothing. No droppings. No nests. No damage. Just silence. But the sounds didn't stop. In fact, they became more organized. Almost like someone was walking. One night, Mark decided to stay awake. At exactly 2:27 a.m., the noise started again. Creak. Pause. Creak. But this time, it stopped directly above his bedroom. And then, 3 slow knocks. Directly above his head. The next morning, Mark called a contractor to inspect the attic. When they opened the access panel, the smell hit first. Rotten, damp, unnatural. Inside, they found something that shouldn't have been there. A small mattress. Empty food containers. And a flashlight. Someone had been living in their attic. But it gets worse. The police were called immediately. They searched the entire house. No one was found. No signs of forced entry. No fingerprints. Nothing stolen. Just one thing. In the attic, written in black marker on the wooden beam. I watch you sleep. To this day, the person was never identified. And the family moved out within a week. But neighbors later reported the lights in the house would still turn on at night. Story 2: The Voice on the Baby Monitor. In 2019, a couple from Texas reported something that quickly gained national attention. It started with their newborn daughter's baby monitor. At first, everything was normal. Soft static. Occasional breathing sounds. Nothing unusual. Until one night, the mother woke up to a voice. A man's voice. Coming through the baby monitor. At first, she thought it was interference. But then she heard it clearly. A whisper. Don't move. Frozen in fear, she stared at the monitor. Her baby was still asleep. But the camera slowly moved. On its own. The father rushed into the baby's room. No one was there. Windows locked. Door closed. Nothing disturbed. They unplugged the device immediately. The next day, they contacted the manufacturer. It turned out the monitor had been hacked. But here's the part that still disturbs investigators. The hacker didn't just watch. He spoke again. Right before they unplugged it. Clear, calm. I can see you. No suspect was ever caught. And the family never used another monitor again. Story 3: The Empty Bus Route. In 2008, a bus driver named Carlos Mendez in Mexico City reported an incident that would later become one of the most unsettling transportation cases ever recorded. Carlos drove the late-night Route 17. A quiet route. Mostly empty after midnight. One night at around 1:15 a.m., A woman flagged down the bus. She wore a pale dress, long black hair covering part of her face. She said nothing when she got on, just handed him the fare and sat at the very back. Carlos continued driving, but after a few minutes, he noticed something strange. No movement, no sound. He checked the mirror. She was still there, sitting perfectly still, head slightly tilted down. 10 minutes later, he reached the final stop. He called out, "End of the line." No response. He walked to the back. The seat was empty, but the door never opened. No one got off. Confused, Carlos reviewed the onboard camera footage later that night. What he saw made him quit his job the next day. The footage showed the woman entering the bus, sitting down, remaining still. But at no point did she leave. Even more disturbing, in the last frame before the recording cut out, her head slowly lifts, and she looks directly into the camera, smiling. Story 4: The Locked Room Call. In 2021, emergency services in the UK received a call that baffled operators. A woman whispering, barely audible, terrified. She kept repeating, "He's inside." The dispatcher asked for details: address, name, location. But the woman only whispered, "He's in the room." Police were dispatched immediately. When they arrived, the house was locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry. They broke in, room by room. Nothing, until they reached the bedroom. The door was locked from the inside. They forced it open. Inside, the woman was alone, alive, but in shock, curled up in the corner. They asked her what happened. She said something that still hasn't been explained. "He was standing right there, watching me." There were no footprints, no DNA, no evidence of anyone else. But the call log confirmed something chilling. The call had been made from inside the locked room. Story 5: The Forest Recording. In 2015, a group of hikers in Romania claimed they captured something terrifying on audio. They were camping deep in the Hoia Baciu forest, often called the most haunted forest in the world. Around midnight, they heard something. A distant voice, calling out. At first, it sounded like a person, lost, confused. "Help me." They began recording on their phone. The voice got closer and closer. But here's the disturbing part. The voice wasn't consistent. It kept changing, pitch shifting, breaking, almost like multiple voices trying to speak at once. Then, it said something clearly, something none of them had said aloud. "Turn around." They did. No one was there. The recording, however, captured something else. A second voice, whispering behind them, even though there were only 4 people present. The group left immediately, and none of them ever returned. Story 6: The Hotel Room That Was Already Occupied. In 2013, a traveling salesman named Daniel Reeves checked into a small roadside hotel in Nevada. It was late, around 11:40 p.m. The receptionist looked tired, barely making eye contact as she handed him the key. Room 214. Daniel went upstairs, dragging his suitcase along the narrow hallway. The hotel was quiet. Too quiet. No voices. No TVs. No movement behind any doors. When he reached room 214, he noticed something odd. The door was slightly open. He paused, Maybe housekeeping forgot to lock it. He pushed it open slowly. The room was dark. Then he heard it. Breathing. Not his own. Someone else. He stepped back immediately and went downstairs. The receptionist seemed confused. She checked the system. Room 214 was listed as empty. Reluctantly, she gave him another key. Same room. This time, Daniel returned with her. They opened the door together. Lights on. The room was empty. No bags. No person. No sign anyone had been there. But Daniel swore what he heard was real. He stayed anyway, against his better judgment. At 3:12 a.m. he woke up suddenly. Something felt wrong. The bathroom light was on. He was certain he had turned it off. Slowly he sat up, listening. And then, a whisper from inside the bathroom. "You came back." Daniel ran out of the room and never returned. The hotel later denied any unusual incidents. But locals say room 214 is still rented, and guests rarely stay the full night. Story 7. The missing 911 recording. In 2006, a small-town police department in the U.S. received a distress call that was never officially released. The reason? According to one officer, it was too disturbing. The call came in at 1:03 a.m. A young boy, sounding around 8 or 9 years old. He whispered, "There's someone in my house." The dispatcher asked where his parents were. The boy paused, then said, "They're asleep." Something about his tone was off. Flat, almost emotionless. The dispatcher asked, "Can you go to them?" The boy responded immediately, "They're not moving." Police were dispatched. Lights off. No activity from the house. As officers approached the front door, the call was still ongoing. The dispatcher suddenly heard another voice. Faint. In the background. Not the boy. A deep, slow whisper. He shouldn't have called. Officers broke in immediately. Inside, they found the boy, sitting on the stairs, holding the phone. Alive. Unharmed. But his parents were found in their bedroom. Unresponsive. No signs of struggle. No injuries. Cause of death undetermined. The boy later claimed, "I heard him talking before I called." When asked who, he only said, "The man in the hallway." There was no evidence anyone else had been inside the house. The recording was sealed. And to this day, no one outside the department has heard it. Story 8. The Shadow and the Security Footage. In 2020, a warehouse in Poland installed new security cameras after several employees reported strange activity during night shifts. Items being moved. Doors slightly open. Footsteps when no one was around. At first, management assumed it was theft. So they reviewed the footage. Night after night, everything looked normal. Until one clip. Timestamp 2:47 a.m. The camera showed a long, empty corridor. Still. Silent. Then, something appeared. Not a person. Not clearly. A shape. Dark. Distorted. Moving along the wall. But here, what made it disturbing? It wasn't attached to anything. No body. No source. Just a shadow. Moving on its own. One employee who reviewed the footage reported feeling watched while viewing it. Another refused to return to work after seeing it. Management eventually deleted the footage, claiming it was a camera glitch. but one worker secretly recorded the screen on his phone. Before quitting, he said, "That thing knew the camera was there." Story 9. The disappearance on live video. In 2018, a small content creator decided to live stream an overnight challenge in an abandoned building. Viewers watched in real time. Thousands of them. At first, it was typical. Jokes, exploration, flashlight beams cutting through darkness. Then something changed. Around 2 a.m., the streamer stopped talking. He was staring at something off camera. Frozen. Chat messages flooded in. "What is that?" "Behind you." "Turn around." He slowly whispered, "Do you see it too?" Viewers later claimed they saw a figure standing in the background, barely visible. Then, the stream cut to static. It didn't end. It just stayed on for over 2 hours. When authorities were contacted, they traced the location. The building was empty. No sign of the streamer. No equipment. No phone. Nothing. The account was never used again. And the footage, it was removed from everywhere, except for short clips, still circulating online. Story 10. The door that shouldn't exist. In 1999, during renovations of an old house in France, workers discovered something unusual. A door, hidden behind a wall. No record of it in the house plans. No visible handle from the outside. Curiosity took over. They broke it open. Inside, a small room. No windows. No furniture. Just walls covered in writing. Scratches. Symbols. Words carved deep into the surface. Most of it was unreadable, except for one phrase, repeated over and over. "Don't let it out." The air inside felt heavy, oppressive. One worker claimed he felt dizzy. Another refused to enter. They sealed the room again, immediately. But that night, the homeowner reported something terrifying. Footsteps from behind the wall. Slow, deliberate. And then, a knock from the inside. Story 11. The audio file that shouldn't exist. In 2014, a freelance audio technician named Ryan Keller was hired to restore damaged recordings from an old storage archive. Most of the files were routine. Interviews, voicemails, static-filled tapes. Then he found one file. No label. No date. No description. Just a file name. "Do not play." Naturally, he opened it. At first, nothing. Just silence. Then faintly. Breathing. Slow, uneven. Ryan assumed it was a damaged recording. But then, a voice. Not loud. Not clear. But close. Too close. It whispered, "You found it." Ryan immediately paused the file. Heart racing. He checked the waveform. There was no visible spike where the voice appeared. Almost like it wasn't supposed to be there. Against his better judgment, he played it again. This time the voice was clearer. "You weren't supposed to hear this." Ryan shut down his computer. Completely. The next morning, the file was gone. Deleted. From every folder. Even the backup drive. But something else had changed. In his export history, there was a new file. One he didn't create. Its name. Now you know. He never opened it. And he quit the job that same day. Story 12. The woman who knew too much. In 2001, a woman in Japan checked into a business hotel for a single night. Nothing unusual. She was traveling alone, paid in cash, no luggage. But what happened next disturbed the hotel staff. Throughout the night, she called the front desk, repeatedly, not for help, not for service, but to report things. There's someone standing in the hallway. Staff checked. No one there. An hour later, another call. He's closer now. Again. Nothing. By 3 a.m., her voice had changed. Shaking. Panicked. He's outside my door. Security was sent immediately. They reached her room within seconds. No one in the hallway. They knocked. No answer. They used a master key. Opened the door. The room was empty. No woman. No belongings. No sign anyone had been there. But the phone was still off the hook. And from the receiver, a faint voice could be heard. He's inside now. The hotel never filed a public report. But one employee later stated, the worst part wasn't that she disappeared. It was that she kept calling, even after she was gone. Story 13, the security guard's last log. In 1996, a night security guard named Thomas Briggs was assigned to monitor a construction site in the UK. Standard procedure. Checkpoints every hour. Log entries recorded by hand. His shift began at midnight. Everything normal. 12:30 a.m., all clear. 1:00 a.m., perimeter secure. 1:30 a.m., no activity. Then, 2:00 a.m., his log entry changed. Something is inside the building. No further details. At 2:15 a.m., I heard it moving. 2:20 a.m., it's not an animal. 2:23 a.m., it knows I'm here. That was the last entry. When morning staff arrived, Thomas was gone. No signs of struggle. No blood. No evidence. Just the logbook. And one final detail. The last page had something written at the bottom. In different handwriting. Not Thomas's. He's still here. The site was shut down shortly after. Story 14, the photo taken after they left. In 2010, a group of friends went on a hiking trip in the mountains of Norway. They took photos throughout the day. Nothing unusual. At sunset, they took one final group picture. All 5 of them. Standing together. They packed up and left. Later that night, they reviewed the photos. That's when they noticed it. In the last image, there were 6 people standing behind them. Tall, pale, unfamiliar. None of them remembered anyone else being there. The figure didn't match anyone they had seen. Even stranger. Its face was blurred, but its eyes were clearly visible, looking directly at the camera. They checked the timestamps. The photo was taken seconds before they left. No one approached them. No footsteps. No voices. Just that image. They never returned to that location again. Story 15, the interview that was cut short. In 2007, a local news station in the U.S. conducted an interview with a man who claimed he had survived a home invasion. At first, it seemed like a normal segment. The man sat calmly, describing what happened. They were in my house, he said. The interviewer asked, how many? He paused, then replied, I don't think they were people. The room went quiet. He continued. They didn't move right. They didn't sound right. Then, mid-sentence, he stopped. Completely. Staring past the camera. His expression changed. Fear. Real fear. The interviewer asked, "What's wrong?" He whispered, "They followed me." The broadcast cut immediately. Technical difficulties, they said. The segment never aired again. And the man, he was never interviewed a second time. No public records. No follow-up. Nothing. Story 16. The calls that came from nowhere. In 2012, a man named Eric Lawson reported something that began as an annoyance and became something far worse. It started with missed calls. Unknown number. No caller ID. At first he ignored them, but they kept coming. Every night. Always at the same time. 2:17 a.m. One night he answered. Silence. Then, a faint sound. Breathing. Slow. Heavy. Eric hung up immediately. But the calls didn't stop. The next night he answered again. This time, a voice. Distorted. Almost mechanical. It said, "You shouldn't have answered." Eric contacted his service provider. They traced the calls. What they found made no sense. The calls were coming from his own number. Outgoing, not incoming. But Eric had no record of making them. That night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., his phone rang again. He stared at the screen. Incoming call, me. He never answered again. But the calls continued. Story 17. The room that repeats. In 2005, a college student named Lisa entered an abandoned building as part of an urban exploration group. They had done this before. Old factories, empty schools, nothing unusual. But this place felt different. Cold, quiet. They found a hallway with identical doors. Lisa opened one. Inside, a small empty room. Nothing inside. No windows. She stepped out, closed the door, then opened the next one. The same room. Exactly the same. Same scratches on the wall. Same stain on the floor. She laughed it off. Tried another door. Same room. Again. And again. Her friends began to panic. One of them marked the wall with a pen. They opened another door. The mark was already there. That's when they realized they weren't finding identical rooms. They were entering the same room. Over and over again. Lisa was the last to leave. She later claimed, "When I looked back, there was someone standing inside it. No one else saw it." But she never went exploring again. Story 18. The figure in the mirror. In 2016, a woman in Canada reported something that began with a simple reflection. She noticed it one morning. Her bathroom mirror. Everything looked normal. Except, for a moment, her reflection didn't match. It was delayed. Just slightly. She moved her hand. The reflection followed. But slower. At first, she thought it was her imagination. Until it happened again. And again. Each time, the delay got longer. One night, she stood in front of the mirror. Testing it. She raised her hand. The reflection didn't move. Not at all. It just stared at her. Smiling. Then, slowly, it raised its hand. But she hadn't moved. She smashed the mirror immediately. But later that night, she saw something in another reflection. A dark screen, a window, and for a split second, it was still there. Story 19. The recording from the empty house. In 1998, police investigated a house after neighbors reported hearing screams coming from inside. Officers arrived quickly. The house was locked. No signs of forced entry. They entered. Empty. No one inside. But something was running. A tape recorder. Placed in the middle of the living room. Still recording. They pressed rewind. What they heard was never officially released. But one officer later described it. At first it was just silence. Then footsteps. Then a voice. Begging. The officer paused before continuing. It sounded like the same person. Answering themselves. Two voices. Identical. One pleading. The other. Responding. Calm. Cold. When the tape ended, there was one final sound. A door closing. From inside the room. Story 20. The last message. In 2022, a man posted a series of messages online that quickly gained attention. At first, they seemed normal. Short updates. Something weird just happened. Think someone is outside. Then, the tone changed. I hear it in the house. Followers began responding, telling him to call the police. He replied, I can't. Minutes later, it knows I'm here. Then, a final message. It's pretending to be me. No one understood what he meant. Until the next post appeared. From the same account. Calm. Normal. Everything's fine now. But something was off. The writing style was different. Too perfect. Too controlled. Followers questioned it. No response. The account remains active. But every post since then feels wrong. Like something is trying to act human. Final closing, documentary ending. Some of these cases were investigated. Some were explained away. And some were never meant to be understood. Because the most disturbing possibility is that these stories are fake. It's that they're real. And whatever caused them is still out there. Watching. Listening. Waiting. And now, it knows. You've heard about it. End of series.